With him was also his African bodyguard Yasuke. The young man had first arrived in Japan in 15...
The black Japanese samurai guy!
For this act of loyalty and self-sacrifice, Tsunemon was crucified alive, while his former comrades watched from the...
Oh! No! No! Alright. I think this is... I was trying to find the playlist for this, but I couldn't. But I think this... I'm on the correct chronological order of
Oda Nobunaga
this.
rising from a
Check out my other reaction if you haven't
in central
to the first part.
Japan. But his wars to unify Japan were far from over, and the Demon King of Owari would continue to fight his foes in every cardinal direction until the fateful day of June, when he was betrayed by his subordinate Akechi Mitsuhide. Do you want to command the armies of Oda Nobunaga? The sponsor of...
I don't.
The links are in the description. Developer, Fields.
Yeah, I don't.
With Nagamasa dead and two of the most powerful clans now eradicated, Nobunaga found some time to devote to his new hobby. This was Chanoyu, the Japanese art of the tea ceremony. And
the way of tea.
The same...
Who is this diva? I got some tea.
I got some tea to tell you today, man.
Zeal in this field as he did on the battlefield. He soon started a treasure hunt for the 3 legendary tea caddies, collectively known as the Narashiba Katetsuki. And although he acquired 2 of them,
I should have read that. I did not read that. Should I read that? I'm not gonna read that.
Managed to collect all 3. It was around this time too that the Lord of Owari essentially forced the Emperor to acknowledge his status by asking for a piece of the aromatic wood known as renjitai.
I don't know what that is, but okay.
Under imperial seal, and even past shoguns had been refused such a gift. But where others had failed, Nobunaga succeeded, and thus his status as the most powerful man in Japan was reaffirmed. Yet Nobunaga had still to tie up some loose ends, especially those with the Ikko of Ishiyama Hongenji and Nagashima. So in the following year, he once more campaigned against the monks of Nagashima, marking this as the 3rd and the last time he laid siege to the Ikki stronghold. Unlike his previous attempts, this time Nobunaga would be successful. As he had done in Enryakuji, so too Nobunaga set a fire that engulfed the entire fortress complex. For the besieged Ikki, there was no escape, and some 20,000 men, women and children are thought to have perished in the ensuing inferno.
Oh my gosh, that's actually very awful.
The Ikki monks Nobunaga fought were renowned throughout Japan for their mastery over firearms. It was their deadly accuracy with the arquebus, or teppo as it was called, that ruined the Oda assaults on their strongholds. Yet Nobunaga was no stranger to the deadly new weapon that had arrived with the Portuguese, and in the next year he would elevate himself above the monks as the true master of firearms.
You know what I always found interesting is that Europeans never really wore armor with guns, but the Japanese like always wore, like, I always see like armored men with guns. Always, like, more frequently in Japan than Europe. Now, granted, Japan is much more smaller, and I am aware that armor was too expensive. Whenever they could, they tried, but yeah. Still, though, it is very telling how widespread, compared to Europe, armor was to hold with guns, so...
Nobunaga's second greatest triumph came in 1575, when Takeda Shingen's son, Katsuyori, felt confident enough to challenge the Oda-Tokugawa alliance again. Katsuyori had probed the defenses of both clans in the previous years with mixed results, but this time he had a hidden ace, a traitor by the name of Ogasawara Yohachiro. Yohachiro was the governor of Tekatenjin Castle, and had risen rapidly in the past years from a common vassal to becoming Ieyasu's exchequer. Ambitious and lusting for more power, he was now offering Katsuyori to ride to Okazaki, a castle with great strategic importance, and to open its gates for the advancing Takeda army. However, this plot was discovered by Ieyasu, who was quick to punish the traitor with a gruesome death. When Katsuyori found out that his plans for Okazaki had fallen through, he redirected his army and on the 16th of June laid siege to the castle of Nagashino and its 500 defenders led by Okudaira Sadamasa. With each day passing, Katsuyori's grip around the fortress tightened, and the situation for the besieged garrison grew more and more dire. Thus, on the 22nd, Tori Tsunemon volunteered to pass through the Takeda forces and deliver a message to Ieyasu in Okazaki, asking for reinforcements. Tsunemon's feat would become one of the most celebrated legends of the Sengoku Jidai. Messengers had been sent before the blockade began, but since the defenders at Nagashino had received no reply, they were unaware that both Ieyasu and Nobunaga were planning to march and relieve the castle. At midnight on the 23rd, the brave Tsunemon left the castle, climbed down the hill, and jumped into the river. He swam down the Toyokawa, cutting the nets
what the hell?
strung across it, and made his way to Mount Gambo. At the dawn of the 24th, he lit a beacon, signaling the garrison of his success, and then headed towards Okazaki, where he received praise.
Would anyone not notice that from the enemy's side? Hello?
For his brave deed, and affirmations that the combined Oda Tokugawa forces would move out the next day. On his return, however, Tsunemon was captured by Takeda troops and was brought before Katsuyori, who listened to Tsunemon's story and was informed that a relief force was coming. Katsuyori, perhaps in an attempt to undermine the psychology of the defenders and force the castle's surrender, offered Tsunemon his life and service in the Takeda army. In exchange, the captured samurai would have to address the castle's garrison and announce that there was no army coming to lift the siege. Tsunemon pretended to agree to this, but when the moment came, he shouted that help was on the way and that they should hold until then. For this act of loyalty and self-sacrifice, Tsunemon was crucified alive while his former comrades watched from the...
Oh! No! No! Ow! Yo! Oh, he got that Jesus treatment, bro. Ironic because doesn't like Japan like I don't know much about Japanese culture, but isn't like Japanese culture like infatuated with like demonic things and like demons and whatnot? I never really heard like Japanese culture really and truly glorifying God or anything from the Abrahamic religion at all. Like every single anime I watch or anything remotely Japanese, there's like anything spiritual is demon. Oh my goodness. Like the power of Christ be with you.
Knowing that a relief force was on its way, and with the castle still not in his hands, Katsuyori summoned a war council. While the senior and more experienced Takeda officers like Baba Nobuhara opted for a retreat towards Kai, the younger generation was thirsty for battle. Katsuyori sided with the younger officers,
bad idea,
not knowing that his decision that day would doom the Takeda clan.
Yeah, I mean, come on, bro.
Staying true to their promise, Nobunaga and Ieyasu arrived on the evening of the 27th, 6 miles west of Nagashino at Shidahara with a combined force of 38,000 men.
Oh, wow.
They quickly took up positions on the ridgeline behind a small stream called Rengogagawa as a countermeasure to the feared Takeda cavalry. Seeking to provide further protection for his arquebusiers, Nobunaga ordered the construction of a palisade with a few gaps here and there so as to allow possible counterattacks. His plan was to use rotating volleys of arquebus fire to decimate the Takeda's famed cavalry charge, while his spearmen would protect the missile troops. On the dawn of the 28th, the Allied battle line stood as follows. The extreme right flank of the Tokugawa army was secured by 1,000 men, led by Okubo Tadao. His position was the only one not covered by the fence, but instead was only protected by some trees. Next to him were Osuka Yasutaka and Sakakibara Yasumasa, each in charge of 1,000 men as well. Next in line was the warrior who surpassed death itself, the famous Honda Tadakatsu, who was leading a similarly sized regiment. While behind him
surpassed death itself? What?
Stood his daimyo, Tokugawa Ieyasu, with 2,000 men. On the left flank of the Tokugawa forces, close to the center of the overall line, were Ishikawa Kazumasa and Torii Mototada, with 1,800 respectively, while behind them was Ieyasu's son Nobuyasu, in command of 1,000 soldiers. Next to Torii stood the first Oda contingent under Takigawa Kazumatsu. On his left, occupying the center of the Oda forces, was Nobunaga's star general Hashiba Hideyoshi, who had the honor of guarding his lord, who had placed his headquarters behind him. Next along were Niue Nagahide and Mizuno Nobumoto, while the rear was supported by Sakuma Nobumori. On the other side of the Rengogawa, Katsuyori split his army into 5 divisions, each numbering 3,000 men. One was left to continue the siege on the castle, and another would serve as reserves under his personal command. On the right flank was Baba Nobuharu, in the center was Naito Masatoyo, and Yamagata Masakage was on the left flank. At around 6 AM, the Takeda cavalry charged towards the entrenched allied positions, Masakage's contingent being the first to make contact, with the other generals following suit. Yet every attack had the same bloody fate, as Nobunaga's gunners mowed down Japan's finest cavalry with alternating volleys, though some modern scholars dispute this and argue that the Oda arquebusiers discharged their guns en masse instead. Those who escaped the bullets found themselves against a hail of blades from Oda and Tokugawa spearmen. On the Takeda right
they're gonna get slaughtered.
Baba Nobuharu had made some progress,
Oh,
but was then
guess
met by
not.
a detachment led by Shibata Katsuie and Hashiba Hideyoshi. While the fight raged on the banks of the Rengogawa River, Sakai Tadatsugu with 3,500 men attacked the Takeda forces who were still at Nagashino. They had secretly moved during the night and approached the besiegers from the rear.
Wow!
Watching Tadatsugu's assault from the walls of Nagashino, Okudaira Sedamasa gave the order for the garrison to sally out, and despite being weakened from hunger and illness, they inflicted great damage to the Takeda troops. Back at Shigahara,
Showing up, alright.
Katsuyori decided to fully commit, ordering a general attack and throwing in the last of his reserves. Yet
Hail
even
Mary.
these fresh troops weren't able to dislodge the Oda Ashigaru from their defenses. The bloody struggle between the two forces continued until 1 hour after noon, when Nobunaga gave the order for the Oda troops to fall back on the fences. This was the opportunity the battered Takeda soldiers waited for, and retreated on the road back towards Kai. Seeing this action, Nobunaga changed his orders, now shouting to his men to pursue their opponents. This they did, slaughtering and capturing many of the Takeda, some of which were prominent samurai. In total, around 10,000 heads were taken that day by the Oda men. Among the dead,
What? They took 10,000 heads? What are you gonna do with 10,000 heads, bruh?
most notable Takeda leaders like Baba Nobuharu, Naito Masatoyo, the Sanada brothers, and Yamagata Masakage. On the Oda Tokugawa side, the dead numbered around 6,000. It was a tactical triumph for Nobunaga, who showcased the importance of firearms and fundamentally changed how the samurai armies would conduct future warfare. It was also an unparalleled disaster for Katsuyori, who returned to Kai with a crippled army and morale. He would continue to resist the Oda and the Tokugawa until 1582, but he would never pose a serious threat to Nobunaga again, who was now free to focus his gaze elsewhere. Following this great victory, Nobunaga was left with only 2 potential rivals for hegemony of the island, the Uesugi in the east and the Mori in the west. He would clash with the first in late 1577, when Uesugi Kenshin conquered Noto province, prompting the Oda warlord to gather an army under his best generals and march to Kaga. In the ensuing Battle of Todorigawa, the Dragon of Echigo decisively defeated the larger Oda army, forcing Nobunaga to retreat in a state of panic. But despite Nobunaga's fears, Kenshin wouldn't capitalize on his victory and would die just 5 months later, most likely due to esophageal cancer, a result of his heavy drinking habit. Nobunaga.
Yo, that's how my grandfather died. Literally, that's how my maternal grandfather died, actually. That's mad. That is so mad. Yeah, right. My mom told me that, yeah, he died kind of young. Really, really, really young from throat cancer. Well, I don't know what type of cancer, but all she said was it was cancer in his throat. And she said he used to drink a lot. And that's probably what caused that. I was like, drinking? When I first heard that, I'm like, drinking a lot can give you throat cancer or cancer in your throat? I was like, nah, there's absolutely no way. I'm like, because we drink like every single day. I'm like, we swallow every single day. Like, what? Like, nah. I'm like, nah, there's no freaking way. But never mind. I don't know. Maybe there's something in like wine, rum, and whatnot that I don't know about. Oh my goodness, that's wow. Okay.
Naga's attention then turned towards the Mori clan, the rulers of West Honshu. He entrusted this campaign to two of his best generals, Hashiba Hideyoshi, who would take the southern route, and Akechi Mitsuhide, who would take the northern approach. Unlike the war with the Takeda, it became evident that this would not be decided in the outcome of a single battle, and that it would be a long, protracted conflict as the Mori and their allies were equally strong and mounted stiff resistance against the Oda. However, in 1580, Nobunaga was able to deprive Mori of one of their allies by subduing one of his greatest enemies, the Ikki of Ishiyama Honganji. The following year would have him fighting another bloody war against another Ikki, that of Iga province. The peasant warriors of Iga were masters of guerrilla warfare and espionage, and their skill inspired many ninja myths. They had already repulsed a previous Oda invasion in 1579, led by Nobunaga's second son, Nobukatsu. This time, however, Nobunaga would personally lead his armies, which invaded from 6 different routes, and by early November, the province would become a part of the Oda domain. By 1582, Nobunaga was at the height of his power. The Takeda clan had been virtually destroyed after their defeat in Tenmokuzen and the subsequent death of Katsuyori and his family. The rival clans that still remained in Honshu were also weakened by this point. Mori Motonari, Uesugi Kenshin, and Hojo Ujiesu had passed away, leaving no heir of their caliber behind, as such is often the tragedy of great leaders. Nobunaga, knowing that this was his chance to push for a complete subjugation of the island, decided to send his trusted generals to conquer every corner of Japan, to bring every province under the quince emblem of the Oda.
Yo!
Was sent to invade Echigo. Niwa Nagahide was undertaking preparations for the invasion of Shikoku. Takigawa Kazumasu was on guard against a possible attack from the Hojo, while the star of the Oda army, Hashiba Hideyoshi, was continuing his campaign against the Mori in Chugoku. Hideyoshi, in his usual fashion, had made significant progress until he reached Takamatsu Castle, at which point he called Nobunaga for reinforcements. Just a few days prior, Nobunaga had been entertaining his ally, Tokugawa Ieyasu, in Azuchi Castle. After spending several days with Nobunaga, Ieyasu and his entourage had departed to continue their tour of Kansai, while Nobunaga received Hideyoshi's request for aid. In late June, and after urgently gathering his personal guard, Nobunaga left the safety of Azuchi and rode to Kyoto, accompanied by his eldest son and heir, Nobutada. With him was also his African bodyguard, Yasuke. The young man had first arrived in Japan in
the black Japanese samurai guy
1579 and met with the Oda warlord in Kyoto in 1581. Impressed by the man's physical strength and his color, which had caused quite the sensation amongst the citizens of the capital, Nobunaga took him into.
You know, it's funny because I see Europeans, some, not all Europeans, but the Europeans of a superiority complex that will try to argue nonsense along the lines of, oh, not all races are created equal, blah, 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 blah. And I agree with that, actually. I do agree with that. But you know what? It's funny how they'll never bring this up. Pure African people, pure dark-skinned African people are physically more better than a pure white person from Europe. That's true. That is literally true. The fastest man in the world was black. He was from Jamaica. Maybe he may have been mixed. Wait, Usain Bolt? He didn't really seem mixed to me. Okay, they literally teach us in school in my country the reason why they had to get slaves from Africa was because they tried to use the white people. And the white people, they were not physically able, nor could they handle the weather. They had to get physically stronger people and people that could actually handle the weather. So they went and they got Africans from West Africa. So it does not surprise me that he's strong. It does not. It really does not. Like, bro, that's why whenever I see like these people who have like these whole like superiority complex of themselves, like I'm white and I'm proud, I just laugh. I just laugh, dude, because being white is literally just a genetic mutation that happened from eating because a specific set of humans change their diet due to diet change. Before, people thought that it came from just climate change, but new studies have shown that's actually not why white people came around. No, it's actually what the hell? Because it was a certain vitamin, certain nutrient that caused that to happen. I forgot what. You can go look it up yourself. There's enough studies and articles. There's even a video explaining all of this. But yeah, being white is a genetic mutation that happened because a specific set of humans changed their diet. So, and again, pigmentation is literally an adaptation to protect you from the sun. Bro, it is a fact that black people age more gracefully than white people, okay? Now, I have a good chunk of white genetics in me, okay? I do. So, I'm not even saying this to meat ride anyone because I'm not pure black. If you look at me and you think I'm pure black, you're a moron, okay? You can clearly look at me. You can clearly tell that I'm clearly mixed. Like, people just assume because of my hair that I'm just growing out because I want like long curly hair. I don't want like short freaking curly hair. Yeah, people just assume that I'm like pure black. Not everyone, but a lot of people. They just look at my hair and they think because my hair is like this, now I'm like pure black or I'm like African or something. I'm like, no. 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 Like, but as someone who's mixed, who has both sides of the coin per se, I mean, yeah, I'm grateful for my African genetics. I'm very, very grateful. I'm 6'3". I have very high testosterone. You can hear it in my voice. I'm very, bro, my voice is so deep that people think I'm rude. Literally. People think I'm rude when I'm talking. Guys, there's been a lack of testosterone in men for the past 100 years. It's so bad. When's the last time that you genuinely hear a person with a deep voice? Just think about that for a second. Aside from me, I'm also 6'3", definitely due to my African genetics there. Definitely. Okay? And a lot more stuff. So, I'm saying all this because, you know, I'm just pointing out that these people and their superiority complex, I just laugh at them. Now, don't get me wrong. Are there like also things I'm grateful for from my white genetics? Yeah. Yeah, definitely. But I mean, pure black genetics also have its perks too. So,
to his service. He even made him a samurai, as well as his weapons bearer, and was the one to give him his Japanese name. When Nobunaga and his
fun fact, my name is actually Japanese. My name is Kenji.
Small party reached Kyoto, he decided to stop and spend the night at Honnoji Temple, which was his favorite place to take lodgings whenever he visited the capital. However, the majority of his troops, as well as his son, were billeted in a separate location. Meanwhile, in the nearby Sakamoto Castle, Nobunaga's general Akechi Mitsuhide had gathered his forces in order to assist Hideyoshi, as he had been commanded by his lord earlier. On the afternoon of the 20th of June, he departed from Sakamoto and led his troops as far as the Katsura River. There, he ordered his men to halt and addressed them with one phrase that would change the fate of Japan forever. "The enemy is at Honnoji," he proclaimed, and with that he turned his army around and marched towards Kyoto and the unsuspecting Nobunaga. Before the sun had risen, Mitsuhide's men, under the command of his son-in-law, stormed the temple where Nobunaga was residing. The Oda daimyo had just woken up when he heard the commotion resulting from the fighting between his few guardsmen and the endless tide of Akechi troops.
Oh, wow.
Emerging half-naked and bow in hand from his chamber, Nobunaga killed several of his would-be assassins until the string snapped. He continued to fight by picking up either a yari or a naginata until he received an arrow wound on his thigh. Realizing there was no escaping the inevitable end, Nobunaga ordered his young page, Mori Ranmaru, to set the temple ablaze to prevent the enemy from recovering his head, and then retreated into a secluded spot inside the temple. There, attended by Ranmaru, who would act as his kaishekunin, the man who would cut off his head, Nobunaga drew his short sword and committed seppuku. His young protege also ended his life in a similar way, while his brothers Bonmaru and Rikimaru, who also served as Nobunaga's attendants, died fighting. Another figure that also likely perished in the flames of Honnoji was Nobunaga's first wife, Nohime. According to legend, she died while fighting off the attackers with her naginata, but there are also theories that she somehow managed to escape. Among those who fought loyally to protect their master's life was Yasuke. However, with Nobunaga's fate sealed, the African samurai had no choice but to escape the burning temple and make his way to Nijo-Gosho, where Nobutada had made his quarters and was under attack by Akechi's men as well. Here too, Yasuke fought like a lion, but once again his enemies were simply too many.
Damn!
He was thus captured and brought before Mitsuhide, who scornfully remarked that the man was a beast who was undeserving of the rank of samurai, and therefore not to be killed. It is possible that Akechi's harsh words did not reflect his true feelings towards Yasuke, and instead he sought to spare the man's life by insulting him in such a way. Following this, Nobunaga's former African page was returned to the custody of the Jesuits who had brought him to Japan, and from then on he vanished from history.
What? Wow!
Like his father, was also forced to commit seppuku rather than accept the shame of surrendering. In just one fateful night, Akechi Mitsuhide had managed to deliver a devastating blow to the entire Oda clan and threatened to undo everything Nobunaga had achieved by that point. That same day, he marched from Kyoto to Izuchi, but he was unable to find the remaining Oda family members who had already fled. he was content with looting the treasures Nobunaga had collected there, and in the aftermath, the mighty fortress was burned to the ground, with sources attributing this cultural tragedy to various culprits. Nobunaga's death threatened to plunge the country back into the absolute chaos of the previous decades. However, Hashiba Hideyoshi was quick to realize this was the chance he needed to assert his hegemony over the rest of the Oda vassals, and the race to become the one to defeat the traitorous Mitsuhide was about to begin. More videos on the history of Japan are on the way, so make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see them. Please consider liking, commenting, and sharing. It helps immensely. Our videos...
Bruh. That was such a mad video that I reacted to. Wow. Excellent suggestion, bruh. Wow. That was so insane. Yo. If you like my reactions, you're new to my channel, subscribe. Check out my other reactions on my channel. If you're an active viewer, 99 cents a month, join my channel membership. If you have a lot of suggestions and perks that would be very beneficial. I actually do plan on expanding. I gotta remake my new channel membership video because I am planning on expanding perks. That video that I have there is obsolete. So yeah, I gotta remake a new channel membership video, bruh. Turn the bell notifications on if you have any suggestions that you would love. God, I hate having an overbite. I'm telling you, I'm gonna get this fixed soon. I'm actually going to the dentist tomorrow to resume my treatment. But if you have any suggestions that you know I would love to react to, comment it in the comments below. Comment it. Come on, comment it, man. Again, thank you for watching, and goodbye.